Former President Trump and Kamala Harris facing backlash for ignoring the soaring budget deficit, as economists urge both to get real about fiscal responsibility. For more on all of this, let's welcome National Taxpayers Union Executive Vice President Brandon Arnold and former investment banker Carol Roth, but it's still very smart and you should listen to her. Carol, let me go to you. I understand that certain people want very specifics about the nature of what's going on, but you've got one woman who's been part of this flooding the market with money, throwing money at everything, calling the Inflation Reduction Act, it's the opposite of what it was. It was the new Green Deal, and effectively Biden has admitted this a few weeks ago. Is this something that really can be done, and what should Trump do? He has a history of success in this regard, but his administration did spend a great deal as well. What's your take on this particular issue?
Yeah, certainly I think we can be critical of Trump and his COVID response, but a lot of that came from Pelosi. And if he had not signed those packages, I think people would have gone crazy in that moment. Under Biden-Harris, they no longer had an emergency, yet they continued to spend like an emergency.
Great point.
And so I think that's the differential that you have there. The challenge, Tammy, is that we are in a crisis right now. We have debt to GDP of 120+%. We have deficits in the 7 to 8% range, which is double the historic average. And so it's going to take somebody that can not only have the competence and the will to try to thread the needle and make sure that we increase growth and we reduce spending in a way that doesn't enact inflation or doesn't send the economy sideways, and also the political will. So it's not an easy thing to do, but if you're going to say which is the worst path, it's definitely going to be with Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I think that's the difference. And Brandon, I think you might agree in that regardless, we know what Kamala Harris has supported and done immediately as the incumbent. This notion that she would somehow become a different person entirely and not spend and fix this when we know that Trump has a different business background. She's never run a business in her life. What do you think when it comes to what she would likely do if she were elected?
Well, you look before she had this massive spotlight on her, before she became the presidential nominee, her record in the United States Senate was one of endorsing things like Medicare for All. That's a $30 trillion with a T plan there. So that would absolutely explode our deficit. It would double our national debt if something like that were enacted. And we've seen firsthand over the past few years what happens when you overspend, when you pump trillions of dollars into an economy at a time when it's already struggling, at a time when there's supply chain malfunction. You see inflation go through the roof. That is why Americans really want to see a presidential candidate here, a president who's going to take on our fiscal challenges like an adult rather than just promising everything to everybody.
Well, isn't that what also she's already done? By the way, our Liz McDonald has tweeted, as I guest host for her tonight, that there's video of Waltz previously saying he endorses Medicare for All. So you have this mentality of just throwing money at things. And isn't that, Brandon, what she's also done on the issue of affordability to buy a home? Again, offering money to people, trying to get them to think that that's the solution, when it's got to really be the opposite of that. It's got to be some adult changing of the nature of policy and how we handle taxpayer money.
Yeah, that's Econ 101, right? When you subsidize something, you don't make it less expensive. It may help that individual, but eventually that increases prices across the board. If you want to lower housing prices, what you do is you create more supply. You trim away some of the regulatory costs, the cost of closing a house, 44% of which is made up of taxes and fees imposed by the government. You change zoning laws so we have more construction. Bring more houses online. That's what drives down prices, not subsidies.
Let me go to close this to Carol, who's one of her books is You Will Own Nothing. I hope I've got that right. But this kind of goes down into this framework of everything is unaffordable. And if you're going to get into a house, you're still going to rely on the government to be the kindly dictator to let you do so.
Yeah, I mean, this is the challenge. You have people who don't understand economics. It's the same thing we saw with the stimulus checks, Tammy. I mean, we saw people wanting to get their $1,200 when many of us were saying this is going to cost you $10,000 a year for the rest of your life. And of course, now we've seen that come to fruition. Now she wants to solve housing, as Brandon said, by not fixing the supply problem, but by increasing demand. We know that that's not going to work. So, yeah, she's not going to be Bob the Builder. She's not building 3 million new homes. And unfortunately, this Oprah-style giveaway, we know Oprah's endorsed her. She's taking the, you get this, you get this. Well, unfortunately, that's not free. That's going to cost us all a lot of money.
It's horrible. And you'd think that she would know what that means, that either she's that ignorant or they know that it's not true and will not work, and they're saying it anyway. Either way, we've got some trouble here. Thank you, Brandon and Carol. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
now, former President Donald Trump today